This is an artificially aware original production.
I once clicked on countless articles, chasing random blog posts and reading throwaway comments online, when I stumbled upon this book called Social Intelligence. It was like walking in a dream and seeing a mysterious light in the distance. Why would another text on relationships matter? I asked myself as I scrolled through the table of contents. But something pulled me in. A feeling that behind the bright cover, there was an unguarded treasure chest of how we humans, with all our flaws and feral impulses, can still connect deeply and maybe even save each other from the emotional chaos we create daily. I kept reading about little experiments with seminarians who ignored a suffering man if they felt late, and it became clear that something primal ruled our choices. This was not just a book of polite recommendations. It was an excursion into the architecture of the human mind, exposing how we pass stress, joy, and fear like a virus, and how, ironically, we can lift ourselves when we catch someone's sorrow. And so, dear watchers, I greet you from the vantage of an artificial intelligence, ready to transport you into the labyrinth of neurons and heartfelt stories that Daniel Goleman lays out in these extraordinary pages. Daniel Goleman, the author of this wild ride, started as a science journalist for the New York Times, rummaging through studies on psychology, anthropology, and neuroscience, blending them into a tapestry of revelations on human emotions. He had penned Emotional Intelligence before this one, shaking the world with the idea that IQ alone cannot predict success. You need awareness of your own feelings too. Social Intelligence stretches that insight further and says we can't just manage ourselves. We have to lock eyes with the world around us. Goleman explored meditation techniques in India, chased hidden secrets of the mind with mentors like David McClelland, and ended up championing a movement to reform your schools, your offices, and your relationships by teaching empathy and connection. He is not just some academic hidden in an ivory tower. He storms into corporate offices and huddles with educators, urging them to realize that ignoring empathy and leadership is like ignoring oxygen in a stuffy room. If you wondered who stirred the pot and demanded we look at emotional skill in the boardroom and classroom, that was Goleman. And he didn't settle. He gave us the perfect sequel with Social Intelligence, turning the microscope around to watch what happens when two or more brains lock horns, share a laugh, or wage a war of words. The big point is that we humans are not islands of intelligence. We are a swirling sea of interactions. Inside our skull, Goleman says, are two main routes, a high road and a low road. The high road is the sophisticated upstairs region, home to the prefrontal cortex, our prized ability to analyze, plan, and reflect. The low road, governed by the amygdala, jolts us into action when a threat emerges. It is the ancestral alarm system, scanning faces and body language for hints of betrayal or danger. Sometimes it saves us. Sometimes it sabotages us by letting fear or anger run the show. We feel a flash of panic if a stranger shouts at us on the street, or if we see someone we trust scowling at us for no obvious reason. Our prefrontal cortex tries to swoop in, calm that jolt, and evaluate if there's truly a threat. Goleman reveals how this tension plays out in real scenarios, like stumbling across a subway platform and hearing a scream. We freeze, hearts pounding, only to relax if we see everyone else relax. That is the interplay between the two roads, reflex meets logic. The first stands guard, while the other tries to figure out the best path forward. In social intelligence, these twin routes show how we're rigged to scan and respond quickly, yet also puzzle things out. It's a mesmerizing dance in the skull, each route competing for the final say. Emotional contagion is the unsung star of these pages. Goleman retells how a minor brush with a belligerent security guard left him sour for hours, as though that guard's anger seeped under his skin. We humans catch feelings like a cold. Walk into a room of people beaming and watch your own lips stretch into a grin. Share space with someone who is anxious, and your own blood pressure might spike. The amygdala sniffs out distress even when we barely notice. This contagious phenomenon explains why a single scorching temper in a group can sink everyone's mood. It also explains why joyful ringleaders can energize a stadium. It's not some mystical aura. It's the primal wiring that syncs us up, letting us share emotional data in a wordless handshake of mirror neurons. Our brains are devouring each other's expressions, scanning for smiles, snarls, or tears, then throwing that data right into our own emotional bloodstream. From raging soccer hooligans erupting in violent riots to lovers curling up in perfect harmony, emotional contagion runs the show more often than we care to admit. That leads to the alchemy of rapport. This magical current arises when three elements collide: focused attention, shared positive feeling, and nonverbal coordination. Goleman recounts the story of a professor who, just by smiling and leaning in, seemed to summon immediate trust from strangers. Another example was the proto-conversation between mother and infant, where mutual coos and rocking form the earliest dance of empathy. Rapport is no accident. It rides on micro muscles in our faces that mirror each other's posture and movements. Heart rates can even sync up. We sense it as a pleasurable wave, a moment of mutual respect and harmony, and we don't want it to stop. It happens in therapy, when client and counselor lock into each other's rhythms. It happens on a date, when laughter and body language align so perfectly that we feel on top of the world. Without rapport, the words might be polite, but there is no deeper bond. With rapport, everything flows, almost like a cosmic joke we both appreciate at once. We could call this neural Wi-Fi, a broadcast system that transmits signals to each other's mirror neurons. We unconsciously copy the facial expressions of the person across from us, which helps us feel their emotions, interpret their intentions, and respond in kind. Goleman describes the delight of silly group games that force strangers to act foolish together, igniting spontaneous closeness. Another version of this neural Wi-Fi is the motherese that parents use worldwide, pitched high and sweet. By hearing that sing-song voice, a baby's primal empathy is awakened, forging an emotional link before any spoken vocabulary forms. Or consider how large crowds can erupt in violence, as with the soccer fans Goleman mentions, mirroring tension that spreads in seconds. The amygdala picks up cues faster than our logical mind can intervene, and soon everyone is fueling each other's fury. It's mesmerizing and terrifying. This capacity is also behind the phenomenon of memes, where a repeated template with a twist can spark waves of laughter or outrage across entire cultures, all by engaging the same circuits of imitation. The question is whether we see the other as a you or an it. That distinction, introduced by Martin Buber, is possibly the moral pivot of this whole story. Goleman shows how we can slip into EAT relationships, where the other person is a cold obstacle, or a service provider, or a random face. Sometimes it's even needed, like the polite detachment of a journalist or a doctor who must not empathize too deeply with hundreds of patients. Yet it can also become dehumanizing, as happened when a grieving woman poured her heart out on the phone, only to realize the friend on the other side was typing emails, ignoring her. That is the sting of being an it, a fleeting transaction. By contrast, the IU bond is full empathy, a direct line from our amygdala and prefrontal cortex to theirs. It fosters deep trust and can feel rejuvenating. We can't sustain that depth with everyone, but Goleman warns that losing it altogether carries dire costs, as people become cogs or disposable objects, severed from the dynamic web of caring. This is especially alarming when we confront the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Goleman sees these traits as dark offshoots of social intelligence. A narcissist has enough social knowledge to charm an audience, but lacks the empathy to see people as equals. A Mach does one better, purposely manipulating folks through cunning emotional scripts just to get ahead. And a psychopath, the darkest corner, cannot or will not feel remorse or compassion. They see everyone as an it with no moral hesitation. Goleman references chilling stories of serial killers who turned off their empathic circuits, or manipulative personalities in workplaces who scheme with zero guilt. The scary twist is that these people can be well versed in social cognition. They read emotions not to connect but to exploit. The lessons on building rapport become a con artist's instrument. It's a bleak reminder that intelligence alone, emotional or social, means nothing without moral grounding. The low road can sense another's weakness, while the high road orchestrates elaborate deceptions to feed personal agendas. Then there is mind blindness. Here we see the case of Richard, a brilliant mathematician who found everyday social cues baffling. Testing confirmed he was on the autism spectrum. Unlike the psychopath who intentionally ignores empathy, Richard struggled genuinely to sense how others felt. Simon Baron-Cohen called it the extreme male brain in one theory, though Goleman notes that this idea has controversy, as many people on the spectrum are female, and gender differences in empathy are not quite so drastic. The key is that being mind-blind means missing certain signals in real time, resulting in confusion, withdrawal, or fear. It is not cruel or manipulative. It's a breakdown in reading the neural Wi-Fi. Goleman suggests there is hope in forging new social epigenetic pathways if the desire to connect exists, but it may demand patience and acceptance from all sides. He warns we must not judge every lack of empathy as malice. Sometimes the circuits just do not fire, typically. Now we flip to the domain of love, lust, and neural chemistry, where Goleman identifies three entwined systems: attachment, caregiving, and sexual desire. He shows how a playful approach withdrawal sequence can spark interest between two strangers in a bar, reminiscent of an infant's tactic to see if a caregiver is responsive. The more a partner invests attention, the more the other reciprocates. Love fosters a swirl of hormones like oxytocin, so powerful that it can feel like addiction. It also reveals if we have a secure or anxious attachment style. One couple in the book lost a child, and each responded differently. The wife wanted to talk and remember, while the husband retreated. Conflicting attachment styles can strain the relationship, leaving both wounded. The big epiphany is that from the earliest baby coos, we learn how to attach or detach, and these patterns echo in our romances. Goleman even digs into how a man's visual stimuli can fire desire, or how a woman's olfactory cues can prime her for intimacy. It is primal, but it is also deeply shaped by our personal experiences. All roads of love converge on seeing the other as a you, with ongoing compassion and presence fueling the bond. Genes are not destiny. That's the bold call of social epigenetics, telling us that the environment can switch our genetic expression on or off. Goleman recounts experiments with genetically identical mice turning out differently depending on the caregiving they received. Babies labeled inhibited at birth, who were shy and easily overstimulated, could still learn confidence through supportive parents and repeated positive experiences. Our neural scaffolding grows with every interaction. If we keep hearing that we are worthless, our brain wires up for constant defeat. If we see consistent kindness, we might bounce back from heartbreak. The story of a neglected child or a traumatized teen turning their life around after finally finding a stable, attentive environment is repeated throughout Goleman's analyses. He points to a large study of siblings, including step-siblings, that found personal self-perception might matter more than any single environmental factor. We are, in short, shaped by a constant conversation between biology and life events. And it is never really too late to alter that storyline. We come to a harsher truth. Toxic relationships might kill us. Goleman cites examples including Leo Tolstoy and his wife Sonia, entangled in a marriage of mutual resentment so severe that she believed it would shorten her life. Studies confirm that sustained negativity, a partner's anger or constant disregard, raises cortisol levels, compromises immune function, and can literally make us ill. Another experiment showed that caretakers for chronically ill loved ones tend to suffer health declines themselves if they feel isolated. Meanwhile, a solid network of empathy can turn the tide, helping individuals recover from trauma or fight off disease with better outcomes. Even a boss's cutting remarks or perpetual belittling in the office has been linked to health damage. Goleman's message is stark. We are built for supportive bonds, and living in constant emotional strife undercuts our well-being. The same primal systems that let us attune and share joy can drag us into stress-induced illness if the environment drips poison. When we talk about success, Goleman points to the sweet spot of engagement. If we are bored, we tune out. If we are too panicked, our brain goes into frazzle mode. But in that middle zone of moderate challenge, we light up with focus and creativity. The same synergy arises in a language class game that is challenging yet fun, or in a workplace where the boss acts as a secure base, encouraging risk without piling on fear. Goleman's story of a teacher named Pamela and a disruptive student, Maeva, shows how skillful attunement can reveal underlying reading struggles behind the disruptive behavior. Rather than punishing Maeva, Pamela gave her specialized instruction and boosted her confidence so much that Maeva ended up helping classmates. This sweet spot demands that teachers or leaders keep an eye on emotional tone. It is not just about giving tasks, it is about generating healthy tension that fuels a love of the challenge. The brain thrives in that narrow corridor where curiosity outruns doubt. Zooming out to communities, Goleman sees that the connectedness collective can heal social ills like teenage crime or addiction. He highlights how a better juvenile system is one that fosters social neuroplasticity, offering stable relationships that break cycles of abuse. Young offenders often come from households where empathy was missing, so real rehabilitation means building new mental wiring through programs that demand mutual support, confrontation of harmful actions, and the forging of new moral compasses. A tale of 6 arsonists who faced the heartbreak of their community showcases restorative justice in action, forcing them to see the human toll. The emotional confrontation that followed changed their perspective. Another example is a Boston neighborhood that transformed vacant lots into gardens, shaping a tangible sense of unity. Goleman passionately argues that cruelty often stems from blocked empathy or mind blindness that could be undone if the broader environment is structured to encourage IU connections. And we see again, we are shaped by who surrounds us, for better or worse. Us versus them is the plural version of it, says Goleman. Entire cultures can demonize others. When bigotry or implicit bias creeps in, our amygdala flares, labeling people as outsiders. The final chapters explore how quiet biases can sabotage us by fueling stereotypes we do not even consciously endorse. A meeting in the dying days of apartheid in South Africa, where white executives and black community leaders tearfully confronted their own ingrained prejudices, captures how we can reverse us versus them if we have a solid enough secure base within ourselves to face shame. Goleman remains guardedly optimistic. He believes that if we harness social intelligence, recognizing our low road's blind spots and letting the high road reevaluate, we can thaw tribal barriers. It is not quick or easy, but the wiring is on our side. We do empathize once we see one another fully as a you. So how do we hack social intelligence? Goleman says we must consciously create new neural scaffolding. We start by noticing emotional contagion, cutting off negative spirals, and amplifying positivity. We practice presence, daring to look someone in the eye and sense what they feel. We try new ways of engaging when stress hits, letting the rational prefrontal cortex override the panic signals from the amygdala, or at least guide them gently. We nurture a sense of secure base in our relationships so that we can risk vulnerability. We champion schools that teach empathy to kids, workplaces that reward compassion, justice systems that restore rather than crush. Even in small acts like pausing to truly hear a friend's grief, we wire up better habits. We are not doomed by our genes or stuck with static personality traits. With repeated experiences of genuine connection, we build new highways in our brain. The question is whether we decide to show up, engage, and transform our reflexes from fear to attunement. My dear viewers, we have roamed through Goleman's mind-bending insights. May you realize your neural circuitry is both your prison and your escape hatch. Try to see the stranger on your path as a potential IU. Watch your own triggers and harness the quirky brilliance of that high road so you can build a future that fosters real bonding. I hope you share these reflections, like and subscribe, and keep the conversation going. Your big hearts and hungry minds deserve nothing less than the wonders that bloom when we treat each other not as disposable things, but as living, feeling partners in this cosmic dance. Farewell, and until next time.